Thanks everyone for joining today's session. So we are at session number 4, technically fifth session actually, where today we'll cover the open tender procurement process. Before we get started, the standard disclaimer. The sessions are aimed at sharing of knowledge and experience of DMO gathered over past 3 years while managing procurement processes for award of evaluation of UCSS packages, limited tender studies, survey institutions, empanelment, and many other RFPs. So while we have made reasonable efforts to ensure that the content is accurate, we do not represent or otherwise warrant it to be error-free. Before we jump onto today's agenda, I just wanted to check if there are any open questions from our previous sessions or previous webinars. There was one question that was raised by Atiraj in the previous meeting around the MSME exemptions, and one specific clause in the GFR and in the manual is where if the L1 is not an MSME, and let's say L2 or the other ranked applicants are MSME, then there's a provision where 20% of the procurement can be done through L2s and others who are MSMEs, but at the same rate as L1. So that kind of clauses probably are more relevant to works for goods and non-consultancy services. In the case of consultancy services, it's difficult to split a particular consulting assignment where we say that 20% of this can be done by MSM and the 80% would be done by L1. So, so simple answer to the query raised by Adhiraj in the last session, that particular clause is not relevant for consultancy services. But nevertheless, we do give exemptions to MSMEs in terms of eligibility criteria when it comes to turnover, prior experience, and also in terms of bid security exemptions. So that is something that we have already included in our RFP template. Any other questions from previous sessions? Okay, so with that, we jump on to today's agenda. So today we are going to talk about the open tender procurement process. There are a lot of steps to be covered, a lot of templates to be walked through. So I'm not sure how much time is it going to take. So let's make a start today. And towards the end of the session, we will be in a better position to gauge how much more time will be needed for this particular session. So what I want to cover in this today's session around open tender procurement process, we're talking about 5 distinct steps in any open tender procurement process. What are these 5 steps? The very first and foremost is preparing and publishing of RFP. When I say preparation of RFP, it includes the terms of reference as well, and also all the other key clauses of the RFP. So preparing that draft, conducting of all the stakeholder discussions, also getting approval from IFT, approval from CEO, and if needed, approval from honorable members of Niti Aayog, approval from honorable vice chairman of Niti Aayog. All those things have to be included in this particular step. Once all approvals are in place, then we go ahead, we publish the RFP on the CPP portal. There are certain prerequisites before you publish the RFP on the CPP portal. That's something that Deepak is going to cover in his session when he walks us through the CPP portal. So that's the first and foremost step, drafting the RFP and then publishing it on the CPP portal, inviting for proposals. Thereafter, once the RFP is prepared and published on the CPP portal, then the next milestone is submission of proposals. So right from advertising this RFP, uploading of creatives on the website of DMO of Niti Aayog as well. Thereafter, scheduling a pre-proposal conference where we can address queries of the bidders, of the applicants, also responding to their queries in writing. If there is any corrigendum involved, we might have to also release that. And thereafter, close the submission of proposals by a proposal due date as mentioned in the RFP. So all of that is included in the second step around submission of proposals. Once the proposals have been submitted and we are past the proposal due date, the next step is technical proposal evaluation. So this includes opening of those technical proposals, then setting up of committees for evaluation. There could also be a subcommittee involved. Thereafter, the subcommittee doing 3 checks. First, the responsiveness check. Second, the eligibility check. And the third, evaluation appraisal itself. So that is part of this step. Once the subcommittee has evaluated and have captured their findings, then they present it to the TEC, the Technical Evaluation Committee, and also often called as Consultancy Evaluation Committee. So those results are presented to TEC or CEC. Thereafter, if needed, we can also reach out to the applicants for clarification. So those all things will be covered in technical proposal evaluation. Once the TEC has agreed to the recommendations, thereafter it is sent to concurrence of IFT and approval of CEO Niti Aayog before we publish this stage results onto the CPP portal. So that's the third step around technical proposals. The next step after that is opening of financial proposals. So the financial proposals get opened only for the technically qualified proposals. So in the previous step, what we will do is we'll upload the results on the CPP portal and say that these are the firms, institutions, or organizations that qualify in terms of technical requirements. These are their scores. Thereafter, the sequential step is we open their financial proposals. Once the financial proposals are open, again, the subcommittee does those 2 or 3 rounds of checks, which is around the responsiveness, do the checks around evaluation of the financial proposals, also prepare a comparative chart around which company stands where. Based on the technical and financial proposals, often our RFPs are going to follow QCPS approach. So based on QCPS approach, the subcommittee will also make a recommendation in terms of combined scores. So if we are proposing 70-30 as a ratio, so based on technical scores and based on financial scores, the subcommittee will also make the calculations for final scores and also put in their recommendations around who is the L1 for this particular RFP. So subcommittee will draft this minutes and then share it with the TEC for the consideration. TEC will look through the recommendations of subcommittee, and thereafter they will send it to IFT and CEO for their concurrence and approval respectively. Once secured, then we can go ahead publish the results of financial proposals and award of contract onto the CPP portal. Once the results are uploaded on the CPP portal for financial proposals, then we are talking about award of contract. This involves the formalities to be completed after the financial results and L1 has been announced. This involves first the authority, which is DMU in our case, to share a letter of award with the respective selected applicant or the consultant. Thereafter, they will sign those copies, also send us a copy of agreement, duly signed and on a stamp paper, and that is sent to us. It is countersigned by our nodal officer, and thereafter the contract is assumed to be awarded. It becomes effective from the date of signatures, and it also, if required, mobilization advance. So our model RFP talks about 10% of release of mobilization advance if the selected consultant needs so. So that all formalities will be kicking in at the stage of award of contract, and the respective subject matter team can then commence the study. So what you see on the slide is a summary of 5 distinct steps involved in an open tender procurement process. In the subsequent slides and in the subsequent sessions, if additional session needed, we will cover each of the steps in details. Also, each of the steps we have tried to standardize, templatize it over the last couple of years. So wherever there is a template which exists, I will try to showcase that template to you so that when you reach that stage, you have a starting point and probably do not spend so much time and effort in preparing notes, in preparing documents, in preparing drafts, and so on and so forth. So that's the idea. Over the next 1 hour, 15 minutes, what I will try to do is get into each of these distinct steps into details. But before we go there, any questions at this point in time? Maitri, anything on the chat?
No, Paresh, nothing on the chat.
Okay. Also, while I go through the subsequent slides, I also want the process team from the procurement matrix to pitch in with their thoughts, with their specific experiences as and when they deem fit. Also, what happens is only when you go through the process, you realize the nuances, the nitty-gritties of each of these steps and processes. So please feel free to share your experiences and those specific nuances during the rest of the session. So with that, I start with the first step. So what we're talking about is the preparation and publishing of RFP. So this particular step consists of 8 activities. And in some form, we have covered this in the previous sessions as well. What I'll try to do is probably do a quick walkthrough of them. So starting with first step, which is around drafting of terms of reference. Just to recap here, we are talking about 14 distinct chapters in this terms of reference, covering the background of the sector, objectives of the study, approach to be followed, scope of services. If there's a data collection involved, what will be those methodology? Be clear on the time schedule, deliverables and timelines, payment schedule as well. How are you going to distribute the agreement contract value over the duration of the agreement? Structure of the reports, support that NITI Aayog or DMU is going to provide, what's going to be the reporting governance structure, and so on and so forth. So this is an indicative structure. We had discussed this last time, how important it is to get the detailing right in each of these sub clauses, because this is where it's a way of communicating to the applicants that these are the expectations from this particular RFP. Once the terms of reference is ready, what you need to then put together is the complete RFP together. So terms of reference is schedule 1 of the particular of the entire draft RFP template that we're talking about. And then there are certain clauses which have to be modified in the RFP template that we have in relation to the study that you're trying to commission. So those clauses have to be updated, as I showcased it last time. For DMU purposes, the draft RFP template is ready. Only those sections which are highlighted in yellow needs to be updated. The sections largely are qualifications of the key personnel, the responsibilities of the key personnel. Then we're talking about eligibility conditions, the technical financial capacity of the applicant firm, criteria for evaluation, and thereafter certain modifications or certain customizations to be done in the forms. So that's the second step. The RFP has to be prepared based on the draft template. Once the RFP is ready, the terms of reference is ready, the next step is internal deliberations. So within DMU, we house a different set of experts coming from diverse backgrounds with different experiences in evaluations, in non-evaluations, in procurement, and in other procurement of goods, works, etc. So it's important that related to your study, please identify the officers from DMU who can provide their feedback on this particular study. For that matter, let's say if the evaluation vertical wants to do a study on National Solar Mission, the evaluation of National Solar Mission, they should involve the monitoring nodal officer. So DMU monitoring nodal officer for MNRE. So in this case, it's Maitrey, who is the MNRE nodal officer from monitoring perspective. So she should be equally involved to look at the terms of reference, look at the RFP, look at the requirements, so that she gets involved at the very beginning of this particular study. And it's important that she also stays engaged in this particular evaluation for the subject matter expertise and for her licensing that she has been doing with the ministry over the past. So that's a very critical step. Identify the officers from DMO whose feedback can be sought. Share the TOR and RFP with them over email or a Google Drive folder and ask them for feedback. If needed, you can also schedule a discussion session. So discussion session could include these officers, could include the evaluation experts, and could also include the senior leaders of DMU, including DG Sir. Once you have received feedback from all the officers, all concerned officers of GMO, then go ahead, incorporate that feedback and finalize the draft RFP. So at the end of the stage, probably what should be ready is a draft RFP. Once this draft RFP is agreed within DMO per se, then we need to we need to start consulting outside DMO on this evaluation. So which are the other stakeholders for this particular RFP? The respective ministries departments. So same example, if you're talking about National Solar Mission, we should start engaging with Ministry of NRE and check with them probably if this terms of reference meets all the requirements, if the facts mentioned in the terms of reference are correctly placed, and if there are any additional perspectives that we would like to evaluate in this particular study. So yes, it's important that you involve the respective ministries departments in the consultations. You might also want to reach out to NITI verticals. So in our case, again, National Solar Mission, the energy vertical is the nodal. So we might want to involve energy vertical advisor to seek his comment and his feedback on the evaluation study in terms of reference. Certain clauses, if are deviating from the model RFP and the draft RFP template, then we might also need to reach out to the NITI legal team to understand the implications of those deviations in the model RFP. For example, based on our experience with empanelment of survey institutions, we decided to do away with the hard copy submissions of power of attorney and the bid security declaration form. Now, before we make this change to the model RFP, this is a material change to one of the clauses of the RFP. So before we make this change, we had to actually check with the legal team of NITI Aayog, and they were comfortable with this change, but they did have one suggestion to make, that at the time of award of consultancy, the respective selected consultant or the applicant will have to submit their originals of power of attorney and for bid security declaration. So with that consultation, we could vet that this change will not have far-reaching implications, and also with this additional clause, we would have safeguarded our interests as well. So it's important that whenever you change any clause in the model RFP, and it's also not approved and agreed by IFD or legal team in the past, it's important that you schedule or consult the legal team on that change. Then a similar step, share the TORs, share the RFP with them over email, Google Drive folder, or whatever the means, and seek feedback. For that example, let's say if you're talking about website RFP, it's important that we might also seek feedback from similar ministries departments who have done such procurement in the past. So Shweta had reached out to Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology for their feedback, and they have given, I guess, very rich feedback on SLA agreements, on the requirements of key personnel, and so on and so forth. So it's important that we have a wide range of consultations because this RFP, this evaluation is running over 6 months to 2 years. It's important we get the terms of reference right. Thereafter, if needed, you can schedule a discussion session or multiple series of sessions all together or separately, depending upon the requirements of the RFP, incorporate all their feedback, and thereafter finalize the RFP. What you can also do as part of this wide range of stakeholder consultations is you might also want to reach out to some prospective vendors. Now, this has to be done with caution. We do not want to create a conflict of interest here, where when we reach out to vendors, there is also a possibility of vendors trying to manipulate the RFP to their specific credentials. So if you are at all reaching out to vendors, I think the safest way to do it is to do it through an EOI. So you request expression of interest, you receive interest, and then you can schedule wide range of consultations with all interested applicants. But in interest of time, if you still have to reach out to vendors, then give a fair chance, talk to at least 4 or 5 different institutions, and please document these consultations, and also use your judgment, and obviously follow the code of conduct while you accept or reject any of those suggestions. And especially the confidential details can be kept confidential within TMU, not shared with the this vendors, but definitely certain terms of reference or certain specific clauses can be checked with them before publishing of the RFP. Any questions so far?
Paresh, you just mentioned that there is a code of conduct when accepting or rejecting vendor suggestions. So what exactly is that?
So code of conduct is basically the what is in general parlance, what government officers need to be abide by, and also our consultancy guidelines for the lateral hires also talks about the conduct that we need to maintain. There's also a set of ethics to be followed. So yeah, largely all it means is we put the interest of the authority, we put the interest of the ministry department and interest of the nation before anything else. So that's basically the code of conduct that I was talking about, basically maintaining those ethical standards.
Can I
Sure,
ask a
thanks.
question?
Yeah, Adhiraj, please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but I just wanted to check. You mentioned stakeholder consultations with vendors. At a later stage in the process, once the RFP has been circulated and there's a pre-bid meeting, a lot of these vendors come up with suggestions like, "Ye expert ko hata do, can you relax the qualifications and this, can you increase the timelines, etc." and so on. How much actual leeway is there to modify it after the RFP has been finalized, in terms of timelines, in terms of the experts required, and things like that?
Thanks, Adhiraj, for that question. So at a later stage, once the RFP is published, then how much of the RFP can you actually change? So to answer that question, you can actually go ahead, change the educational qualifications. You can tweak the eligible assignment requirements. You can also make certain changes in the, let's say, talking about responsibilities of key personnel, or criteria for evaluation ±5. So larger, you can make those minor tweaks in the RFP. So definitely at any stage, if you're not sure at the time of publishing of RFP whether you should go with a, let's say, a master's degree or a PhD degree, or you want to keep the limit as 20 lakhs or 25 lakhs on eligible assignments, probably you should start with the higher requirement. So in the RFP, go with the higher requirement, and based on the feedback, decide whether you want to reduce that requirement or hold on to that requirement. So same example, if you're not able to decide whether the limit of the eligible assignment should be 20 lakhs or 25 lakh rupees, start with 25 lakh rupees. During the pre-proposal conference, check if people are comfortable with 25 lakh rupees, or you have received multiple suggestions. If one or two are suggesting to reduce it, probably it's in their vested interest. But if all or most of the firms are requesting you to reduce that limit, then probably you can consider that. The reason I was asking start with a higher requirement is it's easy to reduce from 25 lakh rupees to 20 lakh rupees rather than the other way around. So if you say 20 lakh rupees now and then later change it to 25 lakh rupees, then probably it also puts us in a questionable position that whether we are doing this to support or favor certain institutions. So that's to be on a safer side. What we can do is start with a higher requirement, and at the pre-proposal conference and college addendum stage, bring it down based on feedback from the vendors or interested institutions. Now, how much can you change? If that's your question, Adhiraj, it's a little subjective there. As far as the larger terms of reference, the framework of the RFP, the universe of institutions that you were looking for, as far as that remains same, then corrigendum for few clauses is permitted. But if you're going to change the construct of the RFP itself, then it has to be retendered. So that is something that probably is a little subjective. The call has to be taken depending on the changes that we are recommending, and accordingly decision has to be made. As far as the institutions which were eligible, which wanted to bid for this particular firm, if they still remain in that universe, even after the corrigendum, with few more additions based on lowering of the limits, I think that in that circumstances, retendering is not required. One more consideration, If at all you are coming up with corrigendum, you again need to give enough time for the applicant to submit the proposals. And enough time here means 21 days as recommended by GFR. So if there is no corrigendum, then it's 21 days from publishing date of the proposal. But if at all there is a corrigendum and it impacts the eligibility criteria, then you will have to give additional time, and the time is 21 days from the date of corrigendum. Adinaj, does that answer your query?
Yeah, it does. Thanks.
Okay. Any more queries? Anything on the chat?
No, Paresh, nothing on the chat.
Okay. So with that, we go on to the next act. Yeah.
Himanshu here. I had
Yeah,
one question.
Himanshu, please go ahead. Yeah.
So if you look at stakeholder consultation as a term, then this term has appeared as for the second time. It is also there in the TOR structure also. So how both these stakeholder consultations are different, and what is the significance of stakeholder consultation in the TOR part? How much binding it is for the agency to do that?
Sure. I think both are stakeholder consultations because we are talking to the stakeholders involved. But the difference here is who are the stakeholders and what is the subject topic of these consultations. So here, when you see stakeholder consultations, the stakeholders here are who are the consumer of this report, right? So the consumers of this report is Ministry Department, Niti Verticals, Niti Aayog, IFT as well. So, so we need to consult all of them to check if the RFP, the report that we are envisaging, meets the conditions that we are looking for. So the subject here is different, and the stakeholders here are different. Now, when you talk about the terms of reference stakeholder consultations, there the stakeholders is related to that particular scheme, right? Now, the stakeholders with respect to that scheme could be the nodal scheme division head. It could be the district level people who are implementing that scheme. It could be certain CSO or NGOs who are trying to play a catalyst role in implementation of that schemes. It could also be some multilateral, bilateral agencies who have also partnered in implementation of that scheme. So there the stakeholders are stakeholders in implementation design of the scheme, so that you get their views as well before you frame in, draft in your opinion. So let's say there's a certain finding from the primary data saying that this scheme probably lacks point A, point B, point C. It's important that you also give an equal chance to the scheme division head to tell you why are those gaps, or for that matter, do those gaps even exist? And if Ruhani is there, Ruhani can actually talk about her experience from Swachh Bharat Mission and the construction of toilets that we are talking about. So if you look at NFHS, probably you will see that the toilet penetration is not as much as the ministry claims. But there is also a respondent bias here, where the respondent might choose to say no even when he has already had a toilet, right? Now, why I'm getting into this particular example is to tell you that this particular insight, when you share with the scheme division head that, look, on ground, we saw only 70% beneficiaries saying they really have a toilet, then that particular scheme division can help you say that, look, you should also validate this particular metric through your facility surveys or through other proxy indicators. If you're going to ask respondent, then there could probably a survey bias. So that's why we say stakeholder consultations are very important. And what you see on slide 13 is stakeholder consultations for drafting of RFP, agreeing on an RFP. What you saw on the terms of reference is stakeholder consultations at the stage of launch of the study, at the stage of implementation of the study. Does that answer your query, Himanshu?
Yes, Paresh. So in the TOR, the stakeholder consultation which is mentioned, is there any clause which is making it mandatory for the agency to do this, or is there a limit for or a minimum consultation or a unit like they should do a particular number of meetings, or they should receive feedback from certain stakeholders which is mandatory for them to do?
Sure. Yes, Himanshu. The terms of reference is integral part of the RFP. So anything that you write in the terms of reference is mandatory. Talking about stakeholder consultations, this particular clause typically is written in a way, look at the list provided in Annexure 5, 6, 7 for the stakeholders to be consulted at national, state, district level. And all the list of those stakeholders is provided. Now, those stakeholders could be by designations or could be by names. Ideally, we prefer giving it by designations because the names can keep changing. Also, KIIs. The KIIs that we are talking about is also in a way stakeholder consultations. So that there also, wherever you have said so much number of KIIs have to be conducted is also in a way stakeholder consultation. So in a way, our terms of reference in the current format, in the current structure is very clear, very self-explanatory, and all are binding on the respective consultant.
Okay. So the stakeholders, sorry to ask a follow-up
No
question.
worries. Yeah, please.
So, but the stakeholder consultation part, which is there in TOR, it along with defining the stakeholders that are to be consulted during the study, it also involves defining the stakeholders which we are, for say, mentioning for the KIIs.
So at times the stakeholders are clear. At times, stakeholders, we know the personas, but we do not really know what are the designations, right? So in that case, we might we will try to keep TORs as detailed, as comprehensive to the best of our knowledge. So some places you will know that scheme division head of Jal Jeevan Mission from so and so department has to be consulted, or at a district level, if there's a water resources department, that department head has to be consulted. So things where at some places the designations are very clear, but at some places they might not be clear. Like I'll give you an example of if you were to do a CSR social impact assessment study, and if you were to talk to implementing agencies, it's easy. You will talk to the head of the implementing agency to get their feedback. But if you're going to talk to the donor agencies, the people who are going to give money, right? So who are you going to talk to in that donor agency? It could be a foundation. In that case, it can be the leader of the foundation. If it's a CSR arm within that firm, it's the CSR head of that firm. Often it can also be just under the finance department or could be under the strategy division. So here it's not clear whom you will be consulting. So what you can do is there you can keep it vague that the respective in charge of funds or in charge of CSR expenditure is to be consulted, and at least across 10 different organizations with equal representation from medium, small, large scale firms. So those kind of things can be also mentioned in either in the KIIs or as part of stakeholder consultations.
Okay, thanks, Paresh.
And the biggest part that I missed in stakeholder consultations is also experts. We take a lot of help from experts for maintaining the quality of the report. That also is a stakeholder consultation of a kind.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else before we move to the next slide? Okay. So now we are talking about a draft RFP which is ready, the TOR which is ready. We have deliberated within the MU and everybody is now is happy with the construct. We have also got it vetted with ministries, departments, and other stakeholders. Now we come on to the administrative approvals of this particular document. As per a circular from Department of Expenditure, terms of reference for any evaluation studies has to be approved by Honorable Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog. So if you're doing an evaluation study, there's an added step that first you need to send the TORs to Honorable Vice Chairman for his feedback. Often the Vice Chairman might choose to share the TORs with other honorable members for their feedback. So you might have some additional feedback to incorporate. So please, based on whatever is mentioned in the e-file, you may go ahead, provide clarifications or incorporate any feedback provided. With that, with the feedback of Honorable Vice Chairman and from the members, you can go ahead and finalize the terms of reference. Now, for the way e-file process works, to send anything to Honorable Vice Chairman, you will have to send it to CEO sir first. So the flow of processes here will be the QR are shared with DG sir first, and DG sir will thereafter send it to CEO sir and Honorable Vice Chairman for their feedback. So once we have approval of Honorable Vice Chairman on the terms of reference, thereafter the next steps are concurrence of IFT. For those who haven't heard IFT term in the past, IFT refers to Integrated Finance Division, another word for accounts and controls. So financial controls and accounts division typically used that you see in private sector. So IFT concurrence is needed to proceed ahead with this RFP. The purpose of IFT is to make sure that we are in compliance of all the government rules and procedures, and also vet that whether this outsourcing is even needed or not. So basically exercising that financial controls, they would want to seek some clarity before giving us the go ahead to outsource and make this expenditure for the government of India. And once we have concurrence of IFT, then it can be sent to approval of CEO Niti Aayog. Now, the e-file note that you send for concurrence of IFT and approval of CEO is very important. If you do not get it right, it can lead to a lot of back and forth between the teams. So it's important that you get this note right. It also gives an opportunity for you to have more clarity on how you're going to run the process. So what you see on the slide is a draft structure for preparing a note for approval. I will actually show you a real example from Rfp and from survey institutions. But before we get there, the idea is whatever details are needed for IFT to provide that concurrence, and whatever details are needed for CEO to provide his approval, those details have to be present in the note itself. Now, we have gone through multiple such approvals in the past, and we have never got it right in the first time. There is always some back and forth where IFT keeps asking for some additional details. So what we have done is, with time, we have incorporated all those expected queries from the IFT in this particular note itself. So when you prepare the note, there are 9 specific sections or paras that you should have in your note for approval to give a good idea to IFT and CEO so that they can exercise their approval and concurrence there. First is background. Give in short, in 3-4 lines, explain why are you doing this procurement? What is basically the background behind this procurement? So let's say if we were doing limited tender studies, the background is the Department of Expenditure has asked why so-and-so letter dated so-and-so date that this study be conducted. And the idea is the findings of the study will feed back into the overall budgeting and financial planning of this particular scheme. So provide a quick background of why you're doing the procurement. In para 2, make it very clear what are those 3-4 objectives that you're trying to achieve through this procurement. So what will be the end outcomes out of this particular study that you're doing? So ideally, that could be a recommendation for discontinuing the scheme. It could give you some recommendations for mid-course correction. There could be certain analysis that you are looking for. Best practices compendium could be one objective that you are looking for. So it could be multiple objectives, and each of those objectives or outcomes should be linked to deliverables. And deliverables also has to be very clearly defined. We keep using the framework SMART for our indicators. Similarly, for drafting deliverables or milestones, also you can use the same SMART principles. So make it specific, make it measurable, make it achievable and attainable, make it relevant and time bound. So those deliverables and their timelines can be covered in para 3 and 4. Proposed timelines, while you give a broader picture that this is going to be completed in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, also talk about the specific deliverable wise timelines. Fifth, you might want to talk about estimated cost and budget head. So for DMO cases, the budget comes to the professional services budget line head, and the specific line code can also be mentioned. So when I show you the draft noting structure, I can explain you how this can be worded. At para number 6, in a brief terms, explain the draft RFP document and their structure. So talk about some key clauses. So if you're going to limit a particular evaluation study only to knowledge and academic institutions based on conditions of eligibility, you can talk about that here. If there are specific key personnel or specialists that you are looking for, or in terms of reference, if there are specific deliverable linked payments to be made. So any kind of such models which are used in the RFP document can be explained here, or minimal, you can say that this draft RFP document is prepared on lines of model RFP and it follows the same structure. And it is, or you can also say that this the draft RFP template has been agreed with IFD, and the sections which are highlighted in yellow is the ones those changes have been made. So para 6 is talking about what are the changes that you have made with respect to the standard document structures. At para 7, you talk about the process for procurement, how you're going to conduct this procurement process. So you can also talk about the schedule for procurement process here. What are the timelines that you are seeing? So let's say for National Solar Mission, we want to close this by 15th of March. And this is the procurement process that will follow, and it will be done through a CPP portal. Para number 8, this we have learned with time. We again had to separately go to CEO sir to get his approval on the technical evaluation committee. So what we have now decided in the draft noting structure itself, we put in our recommendations for technical evaluation committee. So you can say that the technical evaluation committee to be consisting of so and so members, and we have covered these members in our session in our last session. With that background, and this clauses from 1 to 8 should make one thing very clear. Can this particular procurement be done in-house or not? If after reading clause 1 to 8, if the IFT is of the view that there is nothing that the DMU cannot do in-house, or that particular Niti vertical or that subject matter division cannot do in-house, then probably they will not give their approval. So it has to be clear, what are your expectations, why you are outsourcing it, what is the specialization that you're going to tap on through this outsourcing. So that has to emerge out very clearly in from clause 1 to 8. This is also in compliance with the GFR rules and procedures, which tells us that these are the specific conditions under which you can do outsourcing. Now, after you've drafted the note, typically the way we end the note is making it very clear for the respective approval authority, what are you looking for? So what we are looking for is, number 1, approval on engagement of consultancy firm for doing so and so study or doing so and so task. Second, you are seeking approval on a draft RFP document. So that particular draft has to be uploaded in the draft under drafts in e-file. Third, you're seeking an approval on the procurement process. So the procurement process here we are talking about is single stage 2 envelope process. Ruhani, you spoke about, this is slightly in deviation with GFR, which says you have to do EOI and it has to be 2-stage process. So it's important that while we are following GFR rules and procedures, it's important that we also get approval of CEO and concurrence of IFD, saying that we are doing an abridged single stage selection process where we'll have 2 envelopes, and this will all be done through e-tender on CPP portal. Last, approval on constitution of TEC. So if your noting is correct, is fine, it addresses all the concerns of IFD in the very first go, then probably you will save a lot of time in back and forth on e-file. So this is a standard structure to be followed. While I open a sample to show you this noting structure, any questions?
Paresh.
Yeah, Ruhani, please.
So step 5 was taking approval of VC, and step 7 is taking approval of CEO. So CEO's approval shouldn't be taken first and then VC.
Good question and good observation, actually. But the earlier one is approval on terms of reference. And this particular document is terms of reference plus all the other key clauses of the RFP. Now, one may argue that why are we going again to CEO sir, right? So when you send to VC sir, you have gone to CEO sir. the other question that Rohani you raised is when you have the approval of vice chairman, why are you then again going to CEO, sir? So again, to clarify, the earlier approval in step 5 that we have is only on terms of reference, and that is through a different circular provided by Department of Expenditure. If the terms of reference, if there is some specific feedback that we receive on terms of reference from vice chairman or from member, it can have implications on rest of the RFP as well. So keeping that into consideration, we need to get the terms of reference finalized first. Now let's say the other scenario where we take concurrence of IFD first and we take approval of CEO and then we send it to VC sir, and then say, let's say VC sir has very specific feedback to give on terms of reference, then the whole RFP becomes null and void. So the idea over time, we have realized it's important that you get the terms of reference finalized first. So that once that is done, then the rest of the RFP, the administrative approval process can be followed sequentially. So Rohan, does it answer query?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so any more queries? Now it's just going to open a draft noting structure. Just give me a second. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Maitri, can you confirm if you can see my Word document?
Yeah, Paresh, it's visible.
Okay, I'm going to zoom in a bit. So we spoke about this draft noting structure. So all the templates, documents that I'm going to showcase in today's call, or if I have showcased it in previous calls or in sessions thereafter, this all have been uploaded and updated on the procurement toolkit folder on the Google Drive. So this is available for your ready reference. And also Maitri has shared that link over the follow-up email after the meeting. So this is a draft noting structure that I've just spoken to you about. And what I'm going to show you first is the sample note that we had created for approval of RFP for institutionalization of OOMF, also called OOMF 2.0. So I'll talk about the sample note, and thereafter with some minor tweaking, how we've incorporated learnings from this RFP into our survey institutions empanelment. So that's something that I'll showcase on the subsequent slide. So what you see on this, the flow, if you look at the flow of this note, it gives a brief background about us, about DMEO. Then it gives a background about OOMF, what has transpired over the past years. Then it talks about the objectives in a way. So it lays down why are we doing this RFP. So I was talking about the reasons why we are doing outsourcing and why this particular RFP is being done. So what we chose to do is first highlight what are the challenges that we are facing under the OOMF, and thereafter we call out the objectives. So what you see on para 6 here is the objectives, very clearly drafted, and I should compliment the erstwhile OOMF team under Anand, who prepared this RFP, very clearly articulated that these are the 6 objectives, and every deliverable was linked to these objectives. All the payments that we were making were linked to those deliverables. Each deliverable also had timelines. So each section was talking to each other. So whenever you get a chance, you might want to look at that RFP. It is one of very meticulously drafted RFPs. Then what you see on para 7 is those those pillars and deliverables. So this is how we were planning to conduct this RFP through a single stage 2 envelope process, having 5 pillars under it and deliverables. The duration being 24 months, 37 clearly defined deliverables against these pillars. Cost estimates. So the detailed budgeting sheet was appended to the e-file. The budget that we were looking for was rupees 6 crore, and the split by years was also given. Process for procurement. So this we were doing through open tender process. So that is what has been mentioned. The composition of TEC is also mentioned here. And thereafter, the approvals that have been sought. Any questions?
Paresh, the technical evaluation committee, if you could just scroll up,
Yeah.
it has advisor PPP from NITI, but not the advisor of the concerned subject matter vertical. Why is that?
Good question. This was OOMF RFP. So it's actually across all ministries and departments. There is no specific vertical that is responsible for OOMF. In that case, we had to go with advisor PPP and PAMD also in this case because it was the same advisor there. It was Parthasatha Reddy ji and earlier Saha sir who were managing both. But if we were to do this OOMF RFP again, probably we will include advisor PPP for his experience with monitoring of projects on a public-private partnership mode, and also PAMD because he would be also interested in the the results of this monitoring because it feeds into the EFC SFC comments that we give. So ideally, we could have either of the two or both on the TEC if you were to do it today.
So one question that's supposing we are preparing an RFP for, let's say, a particular scheme or a sector, then in that case, would you suggest having the concerned subject matter vertical also as part of the
Yes.
technical evaluation committee?
Yes, yes. So the example I gave, National Solar Mission, in this case, instead of advisor PPP or PMD, we'll probably have advisor energy vertical to represent. And if you see, we had also included DDG, Director DMU in this particular RFP, but that might not be needed with representation of DG. This particular position in the TEC could actually be given to advisor PPP or PMD. So for survey institutions, and that's the other note that I wanted to quickly show you. Just give me a second while I move to the other note. So for survey institutions RFP, this is the technical evaluation committee that we had recommended, and this also saw some changes later. So this is what we had recommended, but then later on we replaced advisor PMD was still there. Yeah, I think we retained as is. But you're right, for any evaluation studies, the subject matter vertical advisor is part of the TEC. For that matter, the limited tender studies, we had representation from Industry 1 vertical, Industry 2 vertical, and from PAMD as well, who the advisor was also handling Ministry of MSME then. Does that answer?
Thanks for clarifying, Paresh.
Okay. I also wanted to quickly show you another such note that we had prepared. This is for empanelment of survey institutions. Again, starting with the background. What is this about? Quickly jumping on to the objectives. Why we are doing this? What will be the scope of services? Then the business model. And how you plan to conduct this empanelment. Just give me a second. Yeah, so I was talking about this particular clause 4 in the noting structure. So this was brought in to explain how we are going to conduct this particular survey institution's empanelment. So it's important to explain that what will be the final outcome of the survey institutions, what is the list that we are going to put together, is there going to be some grading? So that is explained in para 4 here. Going on to the next set of details. Rfp document and structure, that's para 5. Validity, this becomes important for survey institutions RFP. It was not critical in the other RFPs that we have floated, but here it was important to make it clear that the validity is going to be 3 years plus 1 year. Cost estimates, this will be only for lesser or equal to rupees 25 lakhs. All the instructions have been given in the RFP. TEC is what we spoke about. And then finally saying that IFT concurrence or approval of CEO, vice chairman needed, on so and so details. So this is just wanted to let you know that there are standard templates which I have uploaded on the procurement toolkit folder on the Google Drive, so that you don't have to start from scratch every time you want to float a new RFP. The other idea is you include all the distinct features that IFD or COSED might be looking for when you send this note for approval. Any questions? Maitri, anything on the chat box?
No, Paresh.
Okay, cool.
Paresh, can you please talk more about IFD, what it does and
Yes, cool. Sure, Rohani. I can come on to that. So the purpose of having someone like IFD to look at the RFP is I spoke about this maker checker principle earlier. The person who makes the document should not check or review that document. This is called a maker checker principle. For that matter, let's say if that's where you try to take care of conflict of interest. And this is very important in procurement. So let's say the person who is putting in the proposal should not be the person who is approving the proposal. The responsibilities have to be separated. Hence, maker checker principle is also often defined as segregation of duties. Segregation of duties principles. So this is a very common term used in procurement. Now coming on to Rohani's question around what is the purpose of IFD and how does IFD look at this document? So the first point is IFD is actually does not belong to Niti Aayog. IFD reports into Ministry of Finance. So they can have their own independent third-party view on all financial expenditures that we are making. So looking at DMU as an authority which is making the proposal for expenditure, IFD is the checker. It's checker of or reviewing authority to say that whether this expenditure is in compliance with government rules and procedures or not. This is also actually the principle for blockchain. So if you look at on a very layman basic principle level, blockchain also is built on the same principle. A person who is making the entry, same gets reviewed by second party, third party, fourth party before it becomes part of that entire blockchain or architecture. So the IFD is playing the role of checker here. Now, what do they check for? They are checking whether that expenditure that we are making, is it reasonable at all or not? So we can't probably, let's say, we can't be asking for 10 crores of rupees for evaluation of a central silk board, or for that matter, we can't, central silk board, I'm not sure if Param is here, but I think it's in the range of 80 to 100 crores of budget, if I'm not mistaken. So you can't be spending 20 crores on evaluation of a scheme which is 100 crores. So those kind of principles basically is what, and I can talk about few very good examples, very good insights that IFT has given to us in the past. So there, IFT looks at whether the budgeting that you have done, is it reasonable enough or not? Second, the purpose that you have cited in this outsourcing, is it even worth outsourcing? So they have had asked, so we were doing a lot of this hiring in the last year. We grew from 35 odd member team to become 100 member odd team. So the first question also, IFT often this outsourcing request would ask us, yeah, you have now 100 odd people. Why do you still want to go for outsourcing? So that's the other thing. They have to be convinced कि ये वाला part जो आप कर रहे हो, this cannot be done in-house. There's specific expertise that is needed. There's dedicated time that is needed. There's urgency of requirement, because of which we are outsourcing. So they have to be convinced on the reasons or the objectives behind the RFP. They have to be convinced about the money which will go into this request. So is that money reasonable? Is it being spent in the right and earnest way? And third is government rules and procedures. So they will look at all your conditions in the RFP and see that if you're not violating any of the principles laid down in the GFR, for that matter, let's say if my turnover requirements in the RFP is 250 rupees crores, they can actually tell me that, look, rupees 250 crores as an entry criteria will limit your RFP to only 4 or 5 big consultancy firms. So we request you to go back and bring this threshold down. So those are the 3 things that IFD will look for. So reiterating, one, whether the RFP is outsourceable and it cannot be done in-house. Second, the budget is reasonable and will give us the returns that we are looking for. Third, compliance with government rules and procedures. So whatever I covered in session 1, they are also going to look through all those clauses through the same lenses. And if at all, for an example, one of the feedback that we got from IFT is at some clauses we had if the first ranked applicant or L1 chooses to back out, then you can go to L2. IFD returned back the file saying that this is violation of GFR, violation of CBC guidelines, this clause is to be removed. So that is what IFD does. Obviously, then one of the RFPs that we're talking about, one of the requirements in the RFP is also that proposal has to be unconditional, unqualified. So there could be multiple other, probably what I was talking is more simplified understanding of procurement of Air India process, but definitely there are far more nuances, nitty-gritties in such large-scale procurements. Probably it will require us to read through those documents in far more details before we reach any conclusions. Okay, I think we got a little
Paresh, can you bring some light on the recently issued public procurement guidelines by Department of Expenditure regarding the single bid?
I think I had done in my session 1 when I was talking about GFR and manual, but if you're saying so, probably what I'll do is I can spend a couple of minutes on just
it will help in connecting the things.
Yeah, I agree. Just give me a second while I bring that up. Just give me a minute. Thanks, Deepak, for that suggestion. So I have that document open in front of me. And I'm going to go to specific clause that even Rohani just was speaking about. Yeah, so this clause 11.8, rejection of single bid. So what you see here is I think one learnings from past again here. So various ministries, departments came together, shared feedback with Department of Expenditure and also with Niti Aayog that such and same changes have to be made to the procurement process. So this document is the latest guidelines. There are 1 or 2 clauses which are relevant to consultancy services. And what Deepak is talking about, one specific clarification that Department of Expenditure has now provided on rejection of single bid. And I'm going to quote unquote here, what they say is, it has become a practice among some procuring entities to routinely assume that open tenders which result in single bids are not acceptable and to go for retender as a safe course of action. Very categorically, it says this is not correct. Rebidding has cost. First, the actual cost of retendering. Secondly, the delay in execution of the work with consequent delay in the attainment of the purpose for which procurement is being done. And third, the possibility that the rebid may result in a higher bid. So under that circumstances, what the Department of Expenditure has recommended is lack of competition should not be the only basis of deciding on number of bidders. Even only when one bid is submitted, the process may be considered valid if it was satisfactorily advertised, if sufficient time was given for submission of bids, the qualification criteria wasn't unduly restrictive, and prices are reasonable in comparison to market values. So based on this clause and based on what is there in GFR 2017 as well for single source selection, we cited these clauses, and based on these clauses, we sought approval of IFT, concurrence of IFT. So IFT, with our explanation, IFT was convinced that procurement was satisfactorily advertised because we went to an EOI stage, we reached out to 60 institutions, then we went with technical proposal and so on and so forth. Sufficient time, we started this whole procurement. The first EOI was done in October, and we invited proposals in December, and the last date was somewhere end of December. So we gave them sufficient time to submit bids. The qualification criteria was not unduly restrictive. So the evaluation stream had drafted the TORs. The criteria was we need only this 5 key personnel. So that was also very wasn't unduly restrictive. What they caught on was prices are reasonable in comparison to market values. Because it's a single bid, there's no way to come up with a market discovery rate. Now, when you do not have a market discovery rate, often what you do is you go with the budgeting that we have done. And in our note for approval, we said, look at our budgeting sheet. We said it will be with taxes, it's going to be 24 lakh rupees. And this is what the firm has quoted. That's where IFT went back. They looked at our previous 8 studies. They said, okay, we understand this is a single bid, but you already did 8 studies recently. There is a market discovery rate, which is 14 lakh rupees, 14 to 18 lakh rupees. Now justify how or why it is reasonable. So just spending a couple of minutes there to set some context, if that gives more clarity. Deepak, anything else that you would want to call out?
Paresh, nothing related to this, but related to this guidelines. For the first time, Government of India has opened the QCBS in works and non-consultancy services.
Okay, for context of our presentations, we'll limit to only consultancy services. There's one more clause now that Deepak was talking about, FCBS. This is a new introduction. We have heard about QCBS, we have heard about LCS. There's a new mode of procurement, FBS, fixed budget-based selection, that has been introduced as per these new guidelines. It's very interesting. What we are doing is, in LCS, you are fixing, you are not taking into consideration the technical proposals. You're only looking at financial cost. What fixed budget does is, it says financial cost is decided. We are going to pay you some X amount, be it 10 rupees or be it 25 lakh rupees or be it 50 lakh rupees. That is decided. Then all the award of contract is going to be done purely on technical scoring. So it's basically a QCBS of a kind, but 100% weightage to technical, and financial is already decided. So this is also interesting. It helps you save the entire time spent in financial proposal evaluation when you know that the range of that study is going to be between 24 to 25 lakh rupees. And अगर उससे ज़्यादा होगा तो हम तो वैसे भी उसको award नहीं कर पाएंगे. So that is what this additional method has been now introduced. Okay, so that's all about.
Manish, sorry,
Yeah.
we had a question from Manish Gadeji. So
Please.
he's asking, Manual for Procurement of Consultancy mandates the appointment of independent external monitors, that is IEMs, to monitor implementation of integrated pact and scrutiny of high-value tenders. While in draft RFP and in MESD 2021, there is no mention of IP or IEM. So is it not applicable to DFO?
Gariji, I'll have to come back to you on IEM, independent external monitors. But in a way, we do have external experts who guide us through the entire quality of the process and quality of the reports. We also have ministry departments who review our reports at each stage. So we do have enough safeguards against independent monitoring on quality of our deliverables. Coming on to integrity pact. While the draft RFP does not really call out specific sections or a specific chapter as integrity pact, but if you compare the clauses of integrity pact and you compare it to draft RFP, there is one-to-one clause mapping. So if you're looking for conduct, confidentiality, data privacy, each of these clauses are already there in the model RFP. So we are actually complying with GFR in that case. This was also a comment that we had received from IFT, and we had given exactly the same response to them, that the clauses which are needed in integrity pact are already in the model RFP. For that matter, they are far more detailed than the integrity pact that is needed. So Manish Gadeji, does it answer query?
Thank you.
Okay. For this particular slide, Deepak, you want to talk about what are the prerequisites for release of invitation for RFP, this particular slide. So we will cover in our detailed walkthrough through screenshots and through real live demo. But can you just talk about that, if any metrics or any team has to publish an RFP, and if they want to send this request to the process team, what are the documents that they should share with you? Deepak, if you're speaking, on mute.
Sorry, Paresh. Paresh,
Yeah.
First of all, we should have the RFP in the PDF form, as we have created the Excel templates for all the forms. So we should have all the RFP forms in the Excel template as well. we should have the financial proposal in the form of BOQ, and we should have the financial proposal in the form of PDF also, because BOQ does not contain the additional cost incurred during the project, like the cost on the travel and etc. etc. So we should have these four things while forwarding the team to the technical team, process team of the procurement, for uploading it on the CPP portal.
Perfect. Do you want to talk about specific around pre-proposal conference details that you seek? Is it just date and time, or meeting link also has to be uploaded on the CPP portal?
Yes, Paresh, that's a part of actually our RFP now. So
Okay.
we should have the dates of the pre-proposal conference. We should have the links for the registration. We should have the link for the conference, time for the conference, and likewise we have everything mentioned, like the time for the financial bid opening, then PDD, then bid opening, and everything.
Sure.
Deepak,
Sure.
can you please tell us why the contents are hidden in BOQ when we open it? पहले दिखाते contents are hidden and then we enable content.
Ma'am, actually it's a standard template which we need to be download from CPP portal, and if you change anything from that standard template, then the CPP portal won't accept that BOQ.
Okay, thanks.
So it's a kind of macros in it.
Yeah,
That's why.
I was actually going to answer that, Ruhani. If at all you open the BOQ and you do not see any content there, probably your macros have been disabled. You have to enable macros for BOQ to function well. And as Deepak was telling, the reason BOQ follows a certain structure is the CPP portal wants to standardize it, and then they give us a comparative chart also, which is the L1, how much different is it from L2, what is the average median rate. So those kind of things, analysis is based on submissions that are done in BOQ. So let's say if people start playing with the templates, if the total amount is in cell number E17, and somebody out of their own creativity, they keep adding some more columns, some more rows, and that becomes F17 or E24, then you might actually be comparing one subline item to the final cost, and it can show very trivial results. So it's important that a standard template is followed, and that's why BOQ is a macro-enabled template.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So with that, we still have 8 more minutes. I will quickly cover the next section, which is around submission of proposals. And this is going to be a little straightforward. And whatever is left on, we can continue in our next session. So talking from a high-level process map perspective, so what are the steps involved? So we are talking about first doing enough RFP and RFP advertising and mailers to be sent. So when we talk about advertising, we are talking about earlier GFR mandated that we need to do advertising in newspapers, in 2 or 3 national dailies or state level newspapers. But thereafter in GFR 2017, they discontinued that requirement. They said we have CPP portal, which has a very wide outreach across all groups of organizations across the country. So you do not need to make undue spends on advertising in newspapers. So RFP advertising and mailers is very important to ensure that we have enough competition in the RFP, we have enough interest. So we do also have a standard distribution list, which can be followed. We send across mailers to them. We have those creatives uploaded on DMO, NITI Aayog website. Also try to publish or publicize this through our LinkedIn and Twitter pages. There is one request that the website team has for us here is we need to give them a heads up at least a couple of days in advance, if at all you're going to upload something, so that they can also let the website agency team know about it, so they can put in some hours, block in some hours for uploading those documents. Also, if at all you're going to reach out to YAP team or the other creative agency teams for creating specific posters or graphics, then also you need to tell them 2 days in advance. So please keep that into consideration when you are planning the whole publicity campaign for your RFP. Thereafter, there has to be provision for the applicants to send in their queries. So I will quickly show you, we have tried to create a Google document where we ask them to register, at the same time posting their queries. Also, the companies have been sharing their queries over email with us. So all these queries have to be consolidated and has to be responded. After the receipt of queries, we reach a stage of pre-proposal conference where we call all the interested applicants to join in, where we tell them this is the RFP, the objectives of the RFP, and also address their queries. Those queries which are received in writing or on the Google forms or through the pre-proposal conference, these queries have to be responded in writing. So we need to prepare a draft of this response to these queries. Some of the queries might require corrigendum. Picking up an earlier example, let's say if you put a limit of 25 lakh rupees on eligible assignments, and we want to now reduce it to 20 lakh rupees based on the feedback that we got from the applicants, then a corrigendum has to be created. So 4th and 5th is drafting response to queries and drafting corrigendum. Because the RFP was approved by CEO Niti Aayog, who is the approval authority, competent authority for approval, any changes that are made to the RFP also have to be approved by him. So reiterating the guiding principle here, because the competent authority of approval here is CEO Niti Aayog, any changes that we make to the RFP also has to be approved by him. So corrigendum, if you're bringing the 25 lakh rupees to 20 lakh rupees, it has to go through IFT concurrence and CEO approval. So once you have received that, then you can go ahead, publish this queries, response to queries and corrigendum on the CPP portal. You can keep sending some reminders to the applicants saying that you have one more week to go, or today is the last day to send in your proposals, or the window closes at 1100 hours. So those kind of mailers that you can keep informing all the applicants and those who are registered. Often we tell them that please submit your proposals a day in advance to the proposal due date, just to avoid last minute technical glitch. And thereafter, we close the receipt of proposal. So that's a high level process map on all the steps involved in the submission of proposals. Quickly throwing some screenshots, snapshots of all.
This process takes how much time, all this 1 to 9?
This is minimum 21 days. So date of publishing of RFP, say later for you to stop accepting proposals. Minimum GFR says you need to finish the proposal in 21 days. So all this can be done in those 21 days to ensure that you have enough competition. So you send mailers, publicity campaigns, you can have a pre-proposal conference, respond to the queries, and accept that proposal. So this all can be done in 21 days, minimum 21 days, because that is how much time you have to give to the applicant to prepare the proposal. But maximum can be anywhere between 40 days, 50 days, could also be 2 months.
Okay, thanks.
Paresh,
Yeah, Himanshu.
If a bidder submits its proposal before a corrigendum is uploaded, in that case, what happens? Do we consider him re-uploading the proposal, or we go with that proposal?
Brilliant question, Himanshu. Actually, in our old hard copy offline days, if somebody submitted the proposal, let's say even a day prior, then there could be a chance for him to withdraw that proposal and then submit a new proposal. So all those provisions had to be put into the RFP itself. But now with CPP Portal, these challenges have been addressed. And I'll tell you how they have been addressed. The particular applicant can keep changing, uploading, re-uploading the proposal until the proposal due date. So it is not accepted until the last hour, last minute. So tab tak, if he wants to withdraw, he wants to modify, he wants to submit a new proposal, he can keep doing that. He can keep having multiple iterations. But the moment 1100 hours जो हमारा due date का time है, वो reach हो जाता है, then they get auto submitted. उसके बाद they can't make any change, they can't withdraw.
Okay, so when a corrigendum is uploaded, do these agency who have uploaded their proposal, they receive some notification that there is a corrigendum which has been uploaded on the CPP portal?
So I think there is a provision for bookmarking certain RFPs. So उसके ऊपर जो भी movement हो रही होगी, they get auto notification, so they can follow certain RFPs. The other thing is, if you are interested in an RFP, you keep checking कि और कोई documents इसमें आए हैं कि नहीं. Third, we have their email addresses. We have they have registered with us for pre-proposal conference. So we also, whenever we release a corrigendum, we also send a mailer to all those people who had registered saying that this corrigendum has been uploaded on the CPP portal. Can you go ahead and have a look? For that matter, we also upload it on our DMO website. So we try always to ensure that the information reaches to all the interested applicants and we receive enough proposals. But yes, to answer your question, there are multiple ways for him or her to receive notification.
Okay.
Paresh, when you issue a corrigendum.
Sorry, go ahead. I will ask after you.
Okay. So when you issue a corrigendum, do you cite some clause of GFR or manual or modular? What do you do when you issue a corrigendum?
Yes, actually, I want to show you a corrigendum. So in the subsequent slides, if you can hold on your question, I will present how a corrigendum has to be drafted and what is the language to be used.
Okay.
Yeah, Param, go ahead.
So Paresh, we have been discussing this, the reapproval by the CEO for any changes made in the RFP. So, and we also have been discussing for the last couple of days that for some of the changes, probably that approval is not required for some small typos and some grammatical errors. I think the team would benefit if you could just explain that in little detail. Like for some changes, probably the CEO's approval is not required.
Sure. Thanks, Param, for reminding me of that specific exceptions. And for this particular exception, let's limit ourselves now only to postponement of submission of proposals, basically change in schedule of selection process. Based on precedents, we have allowed changes in the dates just based on DGS's approval. So if, let's say, if you want to push the submission due date from 16th February to 23rd February, we have been sending it to DGS for his approval and thereafter publishing the corrigendum. Now, somebody may argue that this is one clause in the RFP and again, CEO sir had approved. So अगर इसको change करना है तो आपको वापस CEO sir के पास जाना चाहिए, which there is no one stopping us from going back to CEO sir, just that it requires another set of approvals needed, and often we do not have enough time. These decisions are taken on the last day of the RFP, and if we do not extend it in time, so let's say अगर 1100 hours is our due date and अगर वो expire हो गया, then you can't extend it post facto. वो expire हो गया, इसका मतलब वो proposals have been submitted. So you have to take that action before the expiry of that proposal due date. So in that circumstances, on an exception route, we are taking DGS's approval for changes in the schedule of selection process. For that matter, nodal officer changes also can be done through DGS's approval, or certain typos, very minor typos like column 5 has to be certified by the statutory auditor. Column 5 नहीं है, column 6 होना चाहिए था because थोड़ा typo change हो गया. We added some columns and hence the numbering has changed. Now, if there are such trivial changes to be made, that can be done through DGS's approval. Param, does that answer? Is that what you were seeking? Anything else that you would like to add?
Absolutely. No, thanks a lot. That was helpful.
Okay.
Paresh, is that documented anywhere? What kind of changes? Whose approval?
This is on precedent basis, Ruhan. It's not documented. Anything else, anyone? I know we are on top of the hour. We are already 5 minutes above the designated time. So let me just quickly.
Just want to add one thing in respect of corrigendum. Sometimes we need to issue corrigendum for extending the time of RFP submission. Sometimes that CPP portal won't work. There are some technical glitches, issues, and at times the prospective bidders start raising these kind of issues while uploading the portal on CPP portal. So we have to issue corrigendum for extending the time of RFP submission.
Yeah. So depending on multiple unforeseen reasons, we might have to take different actions. It could be date time corrigendum, it could be corrigendum for pre-proposal conference, it could be corrigendum for specific clauses. So when Deepak walks us through the CPP portal, he will show us different options available for corrigendum. For that matter, cancellation of tender, and this was a very recent discovery that we made. Cancellation of tender is also done through a corrigendum. So yeah, so we'll talk about this when Deepak walks us through the portal. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about now that we're talking about portal, the receipt of queries. There's also a provision for the applicants to submit their queries through CPP portal. So they don't have to do through emails or through Google Forms. They can do it on the CPP portal as well. So what I'll do is I'll just spend a couple of more slides. I wanted to show you some sample mailers that now we have templatized. So what you see is what Charlo has created as a standard template. And now all we need to do is change the dates, change the RFP name, and we can keep reusing same templates again. Earlier, what used to happen is we used to send it to YAP team, and YAP team used to take weeks and weeks together to just send us creatives. And एक छोटा सा change करना है, it used to take us 48 hours and 72 hours. So we created our own templates, and now we just need to update RFP names and time and date. I was talking to you about a registration form, something that Deepak also was mentioning, that now this link to this form is embedded into the RFP itself. So for every study, you can have a different form. The form captures minimal details: email name, mobile number, designation, company name, and also has a provision to put in their queries. So I will stop our today's session here. What we'll cover in next session, and Matthew can talk about the time and date for the next session. But in next session, we will cover the next steps. So in pre-proposal conference, what goes into preparation, and here I would actually ask Himanshu in our next session to talk about how he went about preparing for the latest pre-proposal conference. And then we have the template for drafting of response to queries and corrigendum, something that Ruhani was talking about. What are do's and don'ts, because this all become integral part of the RFP. So I'll spend some time to explain you how do we draft that. It will also come handy to the evaluations team, who is actually working on draft response to queries and corrigendum for 2 of their RFPs. So we'll do that and then quickly jump on to the third section, which is evaluation and award of contract. So with that, I would stop